Welcome back to the Optimus NFL show. I'm your host, Brad Bolt. My usual co-host, Dan O'Connell, isn't here today. So instead of calling in a season pro, I thought I'd do some community outreach, give an up-and-coming talent his big break in the podcasting world. Now, look, there's a bit of a method to my madness here. This guy's usual co-host, he's actually on paternity leave right now, which means he's shorthanded on his side of things. I'm shorthanded on mine. So think of today's show as a bit of a home-and-home audition. I'm testing him out for the Optimus team. He may test me out for his side of things. We'll see. But we'll see if the kid can play under the bright lights. We'll welcome in the host of the NFL Stock Exchange, the Wriggler, Trevor Sikkema. Welcome, brother.
Brad, I appreciate you having me on the show, man. Just to give the listeners and viewers a little peek behind the curtain, we were chatting for about 10 minutes before we hit record here, and not once did you mention that you had a sick metal intro into the podcast. And so I don't know how we skipped over that with everything that we talked about, because I also love metal music. And so when I heard that, I was like, let's go, baby. I am on the right podcast here. But it's good to be with you, my friend. I appreciate you having me.
No, I'm really pleased that you're able to appear on here. Yeah, I thought I like to keep the metal thing a surprise. And the last time I had a big guest, I had Danny Heifetz from The Ringer on. And he got there and he said that I introduced him, and his first thing he got there and said to me is like, the reason why I keep coming on the show, well, there's two reasons. First, the intro slaps. And that was his first thing that he said. And I was like, yes. I was like,
It's true.
If that's my claim to fame is my intro music, then I might have to get you back on each week just so you can have that played. So yeah, we've got Trevor on today. Now, the main reason, Trevor, that we wanted to get you on is there are, as we discussed about off air too, NFL's becoming a lot bigger in Australia, hence why the Australian game, the start of the season. But we're having a lot more fans actually reach out, and because they're getting into it, they're wanting to learn a lot more about like a scouting process and things like that. Now, I have been watching NFL since, we'll put this in, my very first game, Trevor, of NFL that I saw was, do you remember the Green Bay Packers, I think they were playing a playoff game, and Antonio Freeman's catch where he was laying down and he sort of like caught it on his stomach or whatever it was. And
yes,
that was my very first game of NFL that I ever saw. So I've been watching since then.
Okay.
So I've sort of...
What year was that? What year was that?
I'm going to have to look now, because I think that was, I want to say...
What year was this? 2000.
2000.
It was the year 2000. Wow.
Yeah. So that was my first game. So ever since, so then my very first Madden game was 2004 with Ray Lewis on the cover.
Wait. Hold on. 2004 had Michael Vick on the cover.
Oh,
2005 had
2005, sorry.
Yeah.
2005 was Ray Lewis, and then he broke his wrist like one game into the season, like first game of the season, the Madden curse.
It's the worst. It's the worst when it happens.
But so I've picked up bits and pieces, and obviously watching your show and listening to your show with Connor, you learn a lot through like summer scouting and stuff. So having a lot of people ask some questions about scouting. So I'm just wondering, Trev, can you just explain a little bit first about your process in scouting, and then we can get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty from there.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's funny that you brought up Madden, I think organically at the beginning here, because to be honest with you, where a lot of my, I'll say passion for my process really started was genuinely because of Madden. Like honestly, I tell people all the time, franchise mode and starting a team from scratch and figuring out, okay, like what makes not just a good football player, but a complementary piece, somebody that really helps out a team. That's really where it all began for me. And I grew up just south of Tampa, Florida. So I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. And yes, the Buccaneers had, in my opinion, the greatest defense of all time in the 2002-2003 season. But outside of that year, most of my upbringing, when I was in junior high, high school, into college, and early adulthood, they sucked. And so the only thing that I had to look forward to was the draft, was something to give me hope here. And so that's really, I remember writing mock drafts and listening to Mel Kiper and Todd McShay and those guys through high school, and just like doing that on my own time in high school. And so that was where it all began for me, is this passion to really understand why football is the way that it is. And it's very natural for me to hear that fans of NFL football, American football in Australia, are starting to be like, okay, like American football is really cool, but like, okay, let's dig a little deeper. How do we get here? Let's explain the why. And it's a very natural transition. So I love hearing that. But my scouting process, I mean, just to give like a little bit of a 30,000 foot view of it, I have a massive Google sheet that I build out throughout the entire season. And it has all different tabs with all the different positions and things like that. And within them, I not only have things like background information. Okay, where did you go to high school? What kind of a recruit were you? Did you play multiple sports in high school? Did you run track? Like, what did you do here? You look at their college career, and obviously you have to play at least 3 years in college before you get to the NFL. So it's like, all right, when did you finally start? Are you a late bloomer? Were you starting right away from a true freshman? And then when we do summer scouting, what I do is I watch at least 2 full games of a player, and I'm kind of just watching this player. And I have these 10 different film trait categories. I don't want to give away too much of the secret sauce. No, I'm just kidding. I really am an open book about a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I have 10 different categories for every position about things that matter, right? When it comes to this is just wide receivers, for example, right? I have one of the categories is route running. One of the categories is yards after catch. One of the categories is your hands. How good are you at catching? I have play strength and blocking, your competitive toughness, your footwork and your releases, all of these things that can sort of help tell the story of these players. And the reason why I have all of these categories isn't necessarily to let perfection be the bar, but it's also weighted a little bit differently with each position and with each category. So it's not like I just go, now, if you do this, and this could be a good place to start, you say to yourself, all right, well, let me have 10 categories. You could score 1 out of 10. And at the end, it'll spit out a number 1 through 100. And that could be like a ranking and a way that you kind of like do this and you get it as scout. Mine's weighted a little bit differently. So like route running and separation. I know we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, but like I prioritize that a lot for wide receivers. So instead of just being able to earn 10 points, okay, well, in that category, maybe you can earn 16 or 18. And that means that you earn less in other ones, right? Like blocking might be like, okay, the maximum you could get is 6 or something like that. But you want to be able to, and I think this is probably the way that scouting should really start, is you want to be able to tell other people what a player does well. That's what scouting is about. There's a lot of little details here and there of like, okay, once you understand, what does this player do well? Well, he's a speed demon. He gets down the field incredibly fast. Okay, he's a vertical threat of a receiver. Now that we have established what he does and how he could potentially help a team, let's talk about the negative. He's a little too small. Does he not have great hands? Is he not going to be a great blocker for you? Then you can start to build out the full profile of who this guy is as a football player. But ultimately, what you want to do is you want to be able to tell the story of what a player does really well. And the longer you scout season to season, when you get a lot more players and examples under your belt, you can kind of determine which categories, traits, or skill sets matter more for the NFL level. You understand which ones are a little bit more replaceable, kind of guys that you can like possession guys, right? And I'm not trying to like knock on possession guys because certainly some of the best in the NFL are like that. But you can find a lot of these guys almost every single year. Can you find a guy that's 6'5" that runs a 4.3? No, not a lot. So those guys that you give maybe a little bit more lenience to. So all that to say, like, that's kind of my scouting process. I live in this giant Google sheet that I have built and expanded and tweaked, really, I would say over the past, almost decade now. And every year something changes a little bit in it. Like I might change the formula a little bit. I might add a little thing here that I go, hey, I think this would be really useful. I might change up, how I have it organized or whatever to make it a little bit easier to see and read and keep organized and all that kinds of stuff. But to me, that's how my scouting process is it is based around the tape and watching these players. And I think the best way to say it is that the more you do it, the longer you do it, the more you will train your eye to see the things that really stand out to you that you could think, wow, I see this guy doing it at a college level. I think he could do this at a big level in the pros as well. And I think that's really where the passion and the fun begins, is when you start to find those kinds of players that maybe not everybody sees. Other people might see them, but maybe it's a choice few, and you might be that choice few that actually kind of sees through this player as a diamond in the rough. And that's when scouting gets really fun.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I like for me personally, obviously it's a lot harder to get the tape, like
Of
the all
course.
22 tape. Like obviously, we can see the all 22 through. It's actually through DAZN here in Australia is where you get the NFL Game Pass. So it's not quite the same as the NFL Plus that you have in the States, where you can sort of filter plays down. It doesn't have this. It's just all 22 all the way through. So the part that the most common gripe that I hear from Aussie fans is the lack of the all 22 tape to try and see it. So you're just seeing things through YouTube clips and whatever. The other biggest gripe is that, especially coming from Australia and not coming from the background of understanding, blocking assignments and, how one rep you can sit there and you can, you might see a tackle block the edge rusher and you go like from a non, deep in the weeds type of thing. You look at it and you go, hey, he stopped the guy from getting to the quarterback. But then, you get the other people like yourself who can look at it and go, that was a horrible rep. Like, but he just got lucky sort of thing. Like, so the biggest gripe for the Aussies is understanding how to grade reps and players and stuff. So if someone from Australia came to you and said, hey, Trevor, how do I grade this particular rep for this player, or what do I look for? How would you answer that? I'll give you let's say an edge rusher. So an edge rusher, how would you, if someone says, hey, I can't actually tell, besides getting to the quarterback and sacking him, how can I tell if that was actually a really good rep by the edge rusher? Like, how would you help them or explain to them this is how you would grade that type of rep?
So I wish there were an easier way to, well, I guess I should say one of the easier ways maybe to understand it quicker. Because I think the question that you're really asking is, how can you do those things, not in a cutting corner way, but quickly, right? Because I think the real answer to that is the more you watch, the better your eye will get. You will train your eye to things that are real reps versus fool's gold. You will be able to see like, all right, well, sure, that guy won on that rep there, but it's because the offensive lineman wasn't really blocking him the way that he needed to. Like, it was sort of like, okay, the play was going to the right, so he was wide open to the left. You will be able to sort of train your eye to see that. But a way that you might be able to accelerate that a little bit is you talk about sort of having a lack of tape and sort of like looking on YouTube and things like that. If you have access to like just a general like YouTube, honestly, like you can type in coaching clinics. And there's coaching clinics from like really great. I mean, the Nick Saban Michigan State coaching clinic is one of the first ones that I ever watched like 10 years ago. And he's talking about, defensive backs and their footwork. And okay, this is how this is the technique that we use to, go up against this. And this is how I'm explaining, cover 6 rotations and all that kinds of stuff. And sometimes, like, even for me, like still to this day, like I will watch a coaching clinic and I'll be like, you're speaking Chinese to me, man. I mean, like you're explaining things, and I'm like, okay, hold on. Like I have to Google what you just said, and it really is just something that it's because could I sit down with somebody and watch a game with somebody, and I could sort of like break down like the reps and say like, hey, like this is what I saw out of this rep. This is what I saw. Yes, I could do that sort of like at a rep for rep type of a thing. But for somebody who is asking sort of like, or wanting the answer to the question the way that you posed it there, I think the real answer is just the more you watch, the better you will get at it. And it really just comes down to, if you want to supplement that with like if you're watching offensive linemen, right? And you're saying like, hey, I'm gonna watch offensive linemen today. You might say to yourself like, all right, hold on. Let me type into YouTube first, like offensive line coaching clinic. And like maybe it's a 30, 40-minute video or whatever. And you go, hey, let me watch this. I'll watch this first and foremost. And maybe it won't teach you, it likely won't teach you everything you want to know about an offensive lineman. But you might learn something from that coaching clinic where he might be talking about, the technique of two-handed punches or staggered punches or one-handed punches. And he'll be telling you things like, okay, this is the timing in which you want, like you want your foot punch, or you want your hand punch to be married with like when your outside foot hits the ground. So you have sort of maximum strength going into a player. He'll talk about aiming points of like, this is where we want the hand to be, not over here, not on the shoulder. Like this is where we want it to be. And the more of those things that you watch, the better is it. And I think the more it accelerates kind of understanding what reps mean the most, or really, I think the better way to say it is the reps that are repeatable. Because
Yeah.
if you want me to be honest, that was the biggest learning curve for me when I started scouting, is being able to look at a player at his best. Because remember, one of the first things I learned is tell me what a guy can do. Show me what
Yeah.
he is at his best. Show me what. And so I would watch like the best of these players and I go like, okay, this is what he does. But I didn't think enough about, okay, hold on. I just showed you his best 5 plays. How repeatable are they? How much can you actually guarantee that we're going to get this all the time? And I think that's really what scouting sort of comes down to, is a lot of people want to scout for the ceiling. They want to talk about the potential of the player. What does their best look like? But it is also very important to understand the floor. How repeatable is it? You know, is this someone who's a major boomer bust? He's either going to hit a home run for you or he's going to strike out bad, like whatever that is. So I'm kind of a little bit going on a tangent, rambling a little bit there, but like I think that would be my answer to that question, is just the more you watch, genuinely, the more your eye will naturally be able to say like, yeah, okay, he did that one time, but I haven't seen him do that at all the rest of the game. So then you start to go, well, why hasn't he done that the rest of the game? And then you really start to realize like, oh, well, if he doesn't get a good jump off the snap, if he doesn't, maybe time the snap even before the ball moves, well, then he's not fast enough to get around the offensive tackle. Then he's neutralized, or things like that. So I think that would be my long answer to that question.
Well, no, and this is the thing though, for Australian fans, like the people that I'm encountering, because it is such like a booming type of sport here now, it is becoming like people are just wanting to learn more and more about the game, and the draft is becoming more interesting. Now, I'm a real sicko with the draft. Like, so when the draft happens, I will watch the NFL Network coverage of the draft, because I like listening to Daniel Jeremiah. I like how DJ breaks down prospects and speaks about them. So I'll watch that. Then, so I usually watch the 3 days, and then once that's done, then I'll go, like this year I went, okay, now I've watched that, I would like to watch, and then I saw that you were doing something with Bleacher Report. So then I watched the 3 rounds of, the 3 videos of you and Lefko and Connor, and that was the day one. You had Micah and Malik Neighbours there as well, wasn't it? Yeah. So then I watched that as well, because then I wanted your thing. So like, the draft has happened, and within the first week of the draft, I've watched the NFL Network coverage, I've watched yours, and then I've gone, did I miss stuff with the NFL? So I've watched the first round again. And like, that's me usually every year, as I like to go back and especially when like I'm at home and I'm doing stuff around the house or whatever, I end up, if there's no basketball or baseball or something else on, I put on the draft, because I like and old drafts and stuff as well, because I like listening to how, DJ looked at a scout when they at a prospect. He scouted a prospect when they were coming out, and how their career has turned out from there. Do you ever look back on any of these old drafts and think, yeah, I really nailed it for this guy? Or you then went, oh man, I completely whiffed for this particular player, and then that leads to how you evaluate moving forward by going, okay, well, I overemphasized too much on this particular trait when I should have been more looking at this particular trait?
100%. And I think that that's not just like, oh, like it's cool you do that. Like, you have to do that, because if you don't do that, it prohibits you from learning and growing as a scout. There's 2 examples that sort of immediately pop into my mind. The first one is a guy that I got very, very wrong. And that is JJ Arcega-Whiteside. He was a wide receiver from Stanford. Yeah. He was coming out in 2019. And I talk about this one as a learning lesson for me. I remember watching Whiteside, and he was somewhat of a smooth mover for a big guy. And both of his parents had high level basketball backgrounds. And he also played basketball when he was in high school. And so he was the king of, okay, I'm going to get to my spot and then I'm going to box this guy out like I'm playing basketball. Just throw the ball up and I'll jump up and I'll be able to get it. And I thought there was so much value in that because of how much he converted those types of catches at the college level. He gets to the NFL, totally washed out. And the reason why is because I didn't take seriously enough how good NFL defenders were in those contested catch situations, and also the fact that Arcega-Whiteside could not separate. And separation is such an important part of playing wide receiver, even if you are a big wide receiver. There has to be a threshold that you have to be able to hit as someone who separates, because if you're not, you're just going to become replaceable. And that box people out type of contested catch living, it's very, 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 very hard to make a living in the NFL if that is your only MO. So that was a guy that I had very, very highly ranked in that class that ended up washing out of league very quickly, that I learned about. Somebody that I was right about on the other side of things, I remember, and I don't love like talking about this as much because I don't love like, talking down on players and careers, but Tyree Wilson. I remember when Tyree Wilson was coming out of Texas Tech and everybody was like, oh my goodness, look at how big and, explosive this guy is, all the things that he does. And I'm watching his tape and I go, where's the explosiveness? Where's the bend?
Yeah.
He's just big. Like I think people watched him and they watched a lot of his best reps, which were against bad offensive linemen, where he's not really winning with good moves. He's not really winning with good timing. He's just winning by being big. And I remember watching him when he was coming out of Texas Tech, and he got drafted 6th overall in his draft class. I had him like firmly as a day 2 player. Like I thought I was like, maybe I'd take a chance on him in the 2nd round, but more, I honestly, my thoughts were more of like, I think he's like a 3rd round guy because he's got great size that you like to bet on, but I'd be much comfortable drafting that guy at 76, not 6 overall. And I remember, the NFL just loved this guy. They thought he was going to be phenomenal. And here he is. He was a disappointment when he was with the Raiders, and now he got traded over to New Orleans, and he's basically on a prove-it deal before, I don't know how much longer he's going to be in the league if he doesn't prove it for the Saints defensive line this year. So I think it's really, really important to go back and look at those draft classes of where you got it right and where you got it wrong, not to necessarily like puff your chest and say like, oh, I got it right, but like that's important to always being the best scout that you could possibly be.
And I just remembered too, confirming that I had this right. JJ Arcega-Whiteside was taken before DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, and Terry McLaurin. So that was
now I did have DK Metcalf ranked ahead of him in my rankings. I will say that DK Metcalf was my wide receiver 1 in that draft. So I'll give myself a little bit of grace. But yeah, I mean, Arcega-Whiteside was picked way higher than he should have been. There's no doubt about it.
And I think too, you obviously, scouting is such a difficult thing overall, because like you see so many people like they get it wrong. It just happens every single year. See a guy that everyone, you might be super high on, never pans out. Someone that you're way low on pans out. Like obviously we look at it now, like granted at the situation he landed in, but Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant in his draft. Like now, if you were to go back and redo that draft over again, knowing what you know now, he probably wouldn't have gone that late. But it just it's such a difficult thing overall. So with that saying, like my next question for you is, in your mind, what's the easiest position to look at and assess and scout, and what would be the hardest? Because I don't know if it's, for me, like looking at prospects, the hardest ones that I always struggle with, even though I love looking at them, is actually DBs, because there are so many plays where they don't do anything. Like,
sure.
Like you're watching it and you watch a game and you're like,
there's no shortcuts with a DB. There's like, you can't like look at stats or something like that and think that you know a player. You have to watch the tape of defensive backs. Yeah.
Yeah. And the number of times where you watch a DB tape and you go, okay, I've watched 3 games now and this guy has not done anything because they're not throwing the ball at him. And you sort of get a little bit discouraged and go, oh man, should I really watch some more DBs after this? Like, so do you have an easy position that you can just sort of go, like this will get me going, or is there a position that you're like, man, this is way too hard, I'm going to leave them till last? Or
I would say running back's probably the easiest for me, just because I feel like I do have a pretty good handle on not only what works and what doesn't from the running back position, but also like, and this is probably the most difficult part of the puzzle, what's translatable versus what's not. Right? There's a lot of running backs in college football who will rush for over 1,000 yards who don't sniff the NFL. And you go like, man, like, why? And I think a big reason why is because the traits that I feel like I hone in on with running backs, the two main ones that I know we'll talk about a little bit more, but it's like, it's vision and it's missed tackles force. Like, that's basically it. That's how you individualize your role in the offense beyond the offensive line, right? Because that's always the $1 million question. Is like, all right, this running back had a great day or he's had a great season. Is it him or is the O-line kicking ass in front of him, right? Like, which one is it? And a lot of times it's both, but one way to really take the running back and individualize essentially like what they do and their value comes down to those two traits being married together. Is how quickly do you see it? How quickly do you see the offensive line? How quickly do you see open space that's manifesting? And then can you make guys miss? Whether you're lowering the shoulder or whether you're, juking them or whatever, like, can you make guys miss? Because if you can do those things really well, you're going to be a valuable back at the NFL level. Now, I don't know if that means that you're going to be a lead back at the NFL level, because there's just a lot of them. But I think I have a pretty good feel to identify a running back that will work and that won't at the NFL level. So I would say that position's, if there is an easy position to scout, that one's a little bit easier for me to identify what I think is translatable. Man, what's a tough position?
You can say long snapper if you want, or holder, or
long snapper's pretty straightforward. So is kicker and punter. I think. You talked about DB. I think DB is a tough one for sure. I think all offense. I think offensive lineman for me is probably just like the maybe the position that I've had to work on the most, because if you ask people, if you ask NFLSC fans, I'm 6'5", 240 pounds, because I host the podcast, and that's the measurables that you need to have in order to be able to host NFL Stock Exchange. Yeah. But if you ask me off the record, I'm 5'11", 170. And so, like, the movement skills of a 6'6", 320-pound man, like, when I grew up playing, like backyard football or something like that, like, I never thought about playing offensive line, right? It's like, it doesn't enter my conscience how to play that position. And so it's taken me longer to sort of put myself in the shoes of an offensive lineman to sort of think like, okay, think about how they're moving here. Think about when their hand comes up. Think about what would you do if, okay, I've got a vertical set. I'm trying to reach my landmark. I'm putting out my hand. He knocks it away immediately. Like, put yourself in that offensive lineman's shoulders, in their shoes, and you get to think about things from a more, I would say, like, realistic and human perspective of like, it's, for example, like arm length. Like, arm length is something that people talk about when they talk about like facing off in the trenches and all this kinds of stuff, right? For me, it always helps when I go, okay, let me literally think of that. What if, like, let's say I'm going up against you and I'm the offensive tackle and you're the defensive lineman. The ball is snapped, and let's say you got longer arms than me. Let's say that you get your arms, boom, up right here, up and inside of my chest, and you push me on my heels. I think to myself, like, part of what I do with scouting is I try to think to myself, like, what would I do? Right? Like, what's the natural physical thing that, like, okay, now his hands are here. I've got my hands kind of like trying to grasp on his shoulder pads, but I'm now on my heels. What am I trying to do here? Well, you're probably either trying to like break the grip, trying to like break his grip off of you, or if you can't do that, maybe you're trying to like get low, anchor yourself a little more, move your hands inside to try to get more of an inside position and try to like anchor them to get them to stop pushing you on your heels. So it's things like that where offensive line, I would just say, as a long answer to your question, is one that it took me longer to sort of be able to put myself in that mindset and in those mental situations where that's when you really get to sort of understand technique a little bit more. If you try to like actually put yourself in those situations and you physically just ask yourself like, yeah, what would you do? You know, what
Yeah.
what would you do if this defensive end all of a sudden hit you with a spin move and now all of a sudden like you thought you had him, and just think about it naturally like, okay, now their elbow hits your inside hand around. What would you do then at that point? Where you go like, okay, well then at that point I'm probably gonna plant my outside foot as quickly as possible, and I'm gonna try to like get my hands low and then maybe scoop them and try to ride with them before they get to my quarterback, right? And so that was more difficult for me to do as a human being who is not built like an offensive lineman. I think that one took me a little bit more time to sort of just understand.
There's two mic'd up clips which are the most that I've ever related to an NFL player ever, and this is the closest that I'll ever say that I can relate to an NFL player. I'm not one of those people who look at, someone drop a wide receiver drop a catch over the middle and go, I would have caught that. My two where I relate are the clip of Geno Smith when he was on the Seahawks and Aaron Donald breaks through the line and you just hear him go, oh my God, and throws the ball away as quickly as, I'm like, yeah, that's me. If Aaron Donald's running at me, that's me. And the second one was imagining me as an offensive tackle. That one, I think it was Rasheed Walker when Myles Garrett breaks free and just hear, Jordan, run!
Jordan, run!
That's me. I'm like, that's the closest that I'm ever going to get to an NFL player. That's the most that I can compare. So it's like when you're sitting there saying, imagine what I would do. If I'm facing Myles Garrett, my first thing is I'm turning to the quarterback and going, run, just run. That's fair.
That's also fair.
Yeah. So we've been talking about like traits and everything you look at. So I wanted to look at, get you to discuss some of your uncompromisable traits. So
sure.
I know there's been like a lot of discussion, Will Campbell with his arm length, etc. That was one of the big talking points. Now, when you look at prospects, I would assume, you have some uncompromisable traits that you go, okay, well, just say for Will Campbell, for example, you look at him and you go, okay, the arm length isn't one of the issues for me. It's, his stable base. How does he do, against the move, whatever sort of thing. So you have these. What do you look at for certain position groups, and how many uncompromisable traits do you sort of look at for certain positions that you go, okay, I don't care what the 40 time is. He does this. This is what he does really well. And then how do you weigh that from year to year after, you evaluate someone and you go, maybe my uncompromisable trait, maybe I need to tweak that slightly.
So I have 6 of them for 6 different positions. You want me to just roll through all 6 of them real quick?
Yeah, okay. Let's roll through
them. So the first one is with quarterbacks, and the real answer to this, the real answer of what is the uncompromisable trait is confidence, because genuinely, like, it's just quarterback is actually similar to kicker in the fact that like there's a lot of guys that can throw the ball really hard, right? I mean, like there's a lot of guys that do have great arms, but like confidence is all that matters. Sam Darnold with the New York Jets was not an NFL player. Sam Darnold with the Seattle Seahawks is a Super Bowl champion. And if you ask me what the difference is, obviously the Seahawks team was more talented overall than the Jets team. But the biggest difference is that like Sam believed in himself. Sam didn't have all this crazy pressure. And so like confidence is really the uncompromising trait with quarterbacks. But the trait that I would say for quarterbacks is touch. Touch is different than accuracy. Touch is even different than true ball placement. Touch is truly the feel for those 15 to 50 yard passes where, especially if you are rolling out of the pocket and you got to throw on the run or whatever it is, sometimes it's a little flick. This is why Aaron Rodgers is genuinely, I think without question, one of the top 3 arms that's ever played the game in the NFL.
Yeah.
Is because Aaron Rodgers, the level of touch that he had in all situations, in all throws, was unbelievable. And like I sort of said a couple of minutes ago, there's a lot of players that can throw really hard, right? And I think that there's a lot of quarterbacks that have gotten drafted in the first round because they're big and tall and can throw really far, right? Paxton Lynch is somebody that comes to mind. Christian Hackenberg was a guy who a lot of people really touted. Trey Lance, even when he got drafted number 3 overall, right? These are big quarterbacks who have big arms, who you feel like can just make every throw with all sorts of zip, and they've got all these miles per hour that they can put on the football, and they can cannon it in there and all that kinds of great stuff. If you don't have touch, if you aren't able to complete that little pop pass for 5 yards right in the breadbasket in rhythm to a wide receiver going to the sideline or up the field, there's going to be too many times where I wish that you were that. And so to me, touch is an uncompromisable trait for me at quarterback, because if you always want to throw the fastball, fine. I think that you could be a mid-round and day 3 quarterback. But the quarterbacks that I actually really think can make a difference and start in this league, they've all got the ability to layer throws. And when I say layer throws, I mean some guys can put the right trajectory on their fastball, and they can kind of confuse you a little bit, where you go like, oh yeah, see, like he layered that in there between the safety and the linebacker, but he's still throwing a fastball. I'm talking about somebody who really knows how to throw with touch straight at a receiver's hands. I think that's an uncompromisable trait. Running back, I already talked about it a little bit. Vision and missed tackles forced. You cannot create individual value at the running back position if you don't have these 2 traits. If you are big, tall, run fast, run hard, can you play in the league? Yeah. You can get some carries and some meaningful carries in the league in a running back by committee, right? I mean, we talk about guys like Trent Richardson, guys like Bo Scarborough, right? Like these guys who are just these behemoth type of running backs coming out of Alabama. Funny enough, both of those guys, but they didn't really stick around in the league. Why? Because they couldn't see the blocking schemes the way they needed to, and they didn't have the ability to make people miss. And I think an example of that is Bucky Irving. I love Bucky Irving when he was coming out of Oregon. I had him as RB4 or RB5. I can't remember in that class, but I had him as a top 5 back in that class. And the reason why is because Bucky Irving would make you miss. Always. Yeah. Every single time he touched the football, somebody was missing. And I think that's unbelievably valuable. Wide receiver. This one goes into what you were talking about a little bit, where I kind of have to be a little bit contextual with this, with certain guys that I'm looking at, but it is separation. You know, whether you run a 4-2 or whether you run a 4-5, you have to be able to separate. For example, like Mike Evans. I've watched a lot of Mike Evans in my career as somebody who watches a lot of Bucs football. Mike Evans ran a 4.55, right? I mean, like Mike Evans is not fast. Mike Evans is open, though. Mike Evans is open. And the reason why is because Mike knows how to separate with his releases off the line of scrimmage, with his breaks out of his routes, by swiping his hand and clearing his hand to the defensive backs and then turning. And then all of a sudden, you only need a yard. Sometimes that's all the separation you need. But I need you to get me that yard. There are a lot of wide receivers in college who can't get you that yard consistently of separation. And I think that's an uncompromisable one. O-line, you talked about it a little bit with Will Campbell. It's not arm length. It's not size. It's footwork. Footwork's the number one thing that's uncompromisable, in my opinion, for offensive linemen. You have to be strong in your legs. You have to be strong through your core. You have to be nimble on your feet. You have to be able to take contact. You have to be able to anchor well. You have to be able to get out of your stance and reach a landmark when you're vertical or 45 setting against a speed rusher. And the only way that you do that is when you have great footwork and fast feet. For defensive linemen, it's actually a bull rush. That's what I would say is an uncompromisable trait, because if you can't play, I've started to say this phrase all the time. Power is a prerequisite to playing defensive line in the NFL. You have to be powerful first and foremost. There's a lot of these guys that have tried to come from college football to the NFL as these finesse speed rushers, and it doesn't work unless you have elite bend to go along with it. And if you don't have elite Von Miller level bend, then chances are, if you can't play with power, guess what an offensive lineman is going to do? Put one hand on you, and they're going to completely stop you right there from the entire rep. So I think playing with power and having a good bull rush is important, and that's a prerequisite. And then speed for corners. You can't be a slow corner in the NFL. You just can't.
No.
You can't. You cannot be a slow corner in the NFL. You won't exist. You will get washed out. You will not be in the league. So speed, it's not the most important thing for every position, but I would tell you it's probably the most important part of playing the cornerback position. Now, not every corner has to run a 4.2, but you can't run a 4.5 or slower.
Yeah.
The floor for speed for cornerback is a lot higher than it is for a lot of these other positions to make.
So just a question. So if you're scouting someone and they're a corner and you're watching the tape and you go, okay, they do look slow, and they go to the combine and they do run a 4.5, 4.6.
Mm-hmm.
Do you then sit there in your mind and go, okay, they should be moving to safety? Is that
So
sort of like the way you look at things, or do you just sort of go, they've got to be in a very specific scheme to work at
yeah,
corner?
so I think that yeah, scouting many years ago, it used to be like you used to almost kick inside, right? You almost used to be like,
Yeah.
okay, like this is just going to be your third corner. He's going to be playing the slide. You can't do that anymore. Not in today's NFL. They'll
No.
the Kyle Shanahan meme where he's looking through the magnifying glass or whatever, and he's just like pointing you out. Where he's just like, that guy's slow. We're gonna put we're gonna put our fastest guy right there on him. I mean, that's what's gonna happen. So I think that you could potentially move to safety. There have been corners that I've watched where I go, actually, I feel like you're better as a safety. But if you're a safety, you got to be able to tackle. You're going to be asked to rally. You're going to be asked to come downhill. Like you're going to have to be asked to tackle because you think about the position title. Literally, you are the safety valve. You are the last line of defense. And if I can't rely on you to tackle, I don't really care how good you are in coverage. There's going to be too many times where I needed you to tackle and you didn't. So yes, you could move them to safety. But what I actually think is the better answer to your question is I think that in my notes, what I will say is this is a scheme dependent corner who has to play off coverage a lot. Whether it's off cover 3, whether it's off quarters coverage, whatever that is, you can't play this player in press because that's the danger, right? When you talk about a slow corner, it's if a wide receiver gets off the line of scrimmage and hits you with a nice release move really quickly, and he gets even with you as you're flipping your hips to run with him vertically, if he is even with you within his first 2 steps and you're a slow corner, it's over. Like boom, he's catching the ball, he's going 60 yards, you just give up a touchdown. So when you talk about slow corners, you can't put them in that position. So what you have to do is, even if you're playing man coverage, you have to be a scheme, and there are schemes out there that are like this, that are based around keeping everything in front of them and coming downhill to go like rally to tackle or, to break on a route, like as you see it kind of coming or whatever that is, but you can't put them in press. You can't put them in man coverage. Whether that's like cover 1, cover 0, cover 2 man, you just can't put them in those situations. So I think at that point, there are some corners that I watch and I might just go, you are not fast enough to play in the league. Like, I just don't think you're going to make it. But there are others who like, maybe they're really smart. Or like I love the way they have a good feel for zone coverage or whatever it is, where I go, okay, you're not fast. I don't want you in man coverage, but if you could play off cover 3, you could play off quarters, whatever. Like I still think that you could have some value here. So I would say that they would just become more scheme dependent players than do it all type of cornerbacks.
Yeah, I'll have one more question because I know we're almost out of time here, and you've got the rest of your day to get on with. But the last question that I have for you is, with all of your work that you've done, and I feel like personally you're one of the, when I think of like bigger names in the scouting sort of thing, I think of like DJ, Dane Brugler, I think of yourself in that sort of category. So have you ever had like an NFL team reach out to you for your perspective on players? Is that something that's happened to you before?
I've never had like a general manager reach out to me and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this player?" But I have been very fortunate enough to make some friends who are scouts around the industry, whether they're area scouts or, national scouts and things like that. And we'll text every now and then, sometimes it's what's really cool is like, if they ever text me, and a lot of them have, where they're like, "Hey, I was listening to the show." I was like, "You're listening to the show? What do you mean? Like, I'm supposed to be listening to your show?" But they'll tell me like, "Hey, I was listening to the show. Like, I agree 100% with what you said. Like, love this guy. Think he's a great player." Or sometimes they'll say like, "Hey, heard you talking about this guy. The school's not super hot on him. I heard that like, okay, he's not going to test super well at the combine, that kinds of stuff." So it's not as much like a general manager, reaching out to see like what they think about a certain player, but it is really cool to have a good amount of friends kind of throughout the industry that you just get to bounce things off of. Cause like, that's really what it's all about, right? Like I'm I'm in this to have fun, man. Like I really am. Like I love talking ball. I love hearing different opinions. I love going on other people's shows. Obviously, like this one, I love having people on Stock Exchange, all that kinds of stuff. So that's what it's really about. So I haven't been asked to, on draft night, nobody's hit my cell phone and be like, "Hey, we're gonna take this guy here at 52. What do you think?" Nobody's done that yet. Maybe that's coming. Who knows?
Yeah,
But
it's coming. We'll
yeah.
see. I just think that you just needed this push from Australia. That's why that's why we're doing the home and home audition here. So you're on my show to give you that last little push into the stratosphere. I think that's all that it's waiting on.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate you believing in me there to give me that opportunity to take it to the moon there.
We're always here to help out the little guy. That's the way that we look after
and
people.
We love
here.
You for it. We love you for it.
Well, you said that you haven't had people texting you on draft night. Just wait until I get your number, Trev, and then I'll start texting you from Australia, and you'll be like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
See, I'll be happy to take the call though, because I know that you'll be up in the wee hours of the night because you're that dedicated for it. So,
well, luckily for us, the first couple rounds, the first 2 days, they started about 8:39 in the morning, so that's fine. It's just when you get to day 3. And it starts earlier. That starts at about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And granted, the last few years, like I've got 2 kids, so like it's one of those things where I'll say to my wife, she'll be like, "Oh, what happens if the kids wake up tonight?" And I'll be like, "Do you know what? I've got it tonight. I'll take the night, so then I can just put them back to sleep and then just go, oh, well, since I'm here and the TV's on.
Yeah.
Might as well just park myself here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You get the brownie points, you sort of,
Of course. No, you're smart, man. Smart, man.
Yeah, No, I really appreciate you coming on, Trevor. It's been a huge highlight for me. I've been watching and listening to your show for the last couple of years, and the summer scouting portion is probably my must listen to because it opens me up to a lot more people that I haven't started looking at, and now I need to actually get into the habit of building out my spreadsheet the way that you've got yours, because that's my next thing is I need a copy of your sheet so I can work on mine.
Dude, well, first of all, it was great to come on the show with you, but yeah, man, I love just talking the scouting process with everybody. I think it's really cool, and it's something that the best part about it is like it's always evolving. Like again, like I said, like I went back to look at something from I think like my 2021 rankings or whatever, and I pull up the Google sheet from like 2021, and I was like, "Oh, what is this? What is it? What is this simple process here?" And now it's so much more detailed and everything. So it's always very fun to build out, especially as you're learning along the way.
So last thing, Trev, what have you got going on? Because I know you've obviously got Stock Exchange and things are obviously going to be a lot different for you this year, just based off of what they were last year. So what do you have that you can actually share? Because I don't know if you've got anything in the works in the background, but what can you share so that people can see all of your work or listen to it?
So I do have some things in the background that I can't quite say yet, but the most important thing is that summer scouting is starting in 2 weeks. We're going to be starting summer scouting in 2 weeks. We always start with the quarterback position, and then we work our way from there. We'll hit running backs, we'll hit wide receivers, we'll hit the defensive linemen, offensive linemen, all that good stuff. We'll get to as many positions as we possibly can to make sure that we basically give people this primer for college football so that, when college football Saturday comes around and there's a big matchup, they go, "Ooh, I heard about that guy in summer scouting." And we always love when people say those things. So really, what I am actually looking forward to the most is getting that going and actually getting summer scouting going and starting with quarterbacks. I'll give you a little teaser with this. Normally, Connor and I will watch 12, 15 quarterbacks for summer scouting, right? Just so we get a primer on a lot of these guys, and we can give the people, a thorough top 10, whatever. 2027 class is so notable with so many names. I have watched 30 quarterbacks already that are in college football next year that I don't think all of them will declare, but I know somebody's going to ask me about all 30 of them at some point. And that is the 2027 NFL draft class is going to be so much fun to evaluate. So I cannot wait to get it going with summer scouting.
Perfect. And what a teaser to end the episode on. I can't wait. So 2 weeks, I'm just going to write that down. 2 weeks,
There it is.
2 weeks, abandoned family to watch summer scouting. Done. Trevor, really appreciate you coming on, mate. You'll obviously, your Australian fans here are going to really appreciate it. Any fans from over the world are going to appreciate listening to you and everything that you've just been able to discuss with us. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah, I appreciate it, dude. It was so great to meet you. It's so great to pop on, and we'll certainly have to continue to talk soon as the season comes on. So I appreciate you, man.
100%. And like I said, if you and your wife are ever coming out to Australia, hit me up and I will take you to as many wineries as you would like to go to.
Done and done, my friend.
No worries. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Trev.